Okay. Good afternoon or good evening to wherever you may be watching this live stream. My name is Yao Togobo, and I'm the programs manager here at the C Center for Young Black Professionals. I am very excited to introduce this next conversation on C Chats. So this week we're doing a special social media Black Tech Takeover, where we're giving people an insight into what it's like being a Black person in tech, as well as providing some insight into some of the great achievements that Black people have made within the tech field. So even though we know that as an industry, it's one of the places where there's not a high percentage of Black people within that field, but those who are in it are making some great waves. And we want to encourage anyone who may be thinking about applying for our C-Tech and I'm not sure and sitting on the fence and thinking that this may not be an industry for me, know that we do have people in the industry and they're making amazing inroads. So to lay the foundation for you to feel comfortable, to look at the application form, write your name, knowing that there's a massive future in this industry for you. So I'm not going to be doing an interview. We have a special guest by the name of Mahad who will be doing an interview. He's a former city leader of Toronto, and he also works in the digital tech field as a web developer. So I'm going to bring Mahad into the live stream right now. Mahad, welcome to the live stream. How are you doing, sir?
Not bad. Okay. First time ever doing this. Excited to see what happens.
Yes, indeed.
Can you hear me loud and clear or no?
We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much. Okay. Just to give a little bit insight about yourself, from what I understand, you are you were a former city leader of Toronto, correct? And you also work in the digital tech in the field. Is that right?
Yeah. So I was part of a program called City Leaders, me and Agapi a while back, and now for the past year or so, I've been working as a web developer.
Yeah.
And then also I've been teaching. I was an English teacher prior to that. So I've done some traveling as well. So there's a whole bunch of different things about me. So I'm here today as in the role of an interviewer and as a web developer.
Well, I for one want to thank you for taking your time to participate in this, and especially since this is your first time. I have no doubt you're going to have a real stimulating conversation. I'm really excited to bring Dave here. How I came across Dave Cardwell, it was we did a program with Wood Green, or we still do a program with Wood Green, and it was in partnership with Spin VFX. Spin VFX does a lot of the visual effects for a lot of mainstream films and TV shows that may be in HBO, things such as Stranger Things, Game of Thrones, and a whole bunch of other films that you would have heard of. And they employed or they took in on internships 12 of our young people who are going through a compositing course. They employed all 12 to do a 4 to 5 months internships. And during that time, you know, you always notice, oh, there's another Black person that works here. And then he made himself completely affable and approachable. And, you know, we connected, and I like to say he's someone I consider a friend now. When I asked him if he's able to take part in this, he had no hesitation in saying yes. I can actually say I've never met an Oscar winner beforehand, but I can now say I've got an Oscar winner as part of the C family. I'm not going to go too deep into all his achievements because I know Mahad, hopefully you're going to prize that all out of him. So I'm going to bring Dave to the live stream real quickly. Dave Cardwell, thank you so much for being here, sir. Okay. We can't hear you for some reason. Like out of all of that build up, all of a sudden he's.
I'm here. You can hear me now? Yeah.
Excellent. I can hear you. So again, thank you so much for just being so affable and being here. I know you're busy, but the fact able to share your time and have the conversation, and I hope there's going to be young people watching who are going to be stimulated and inspired to not only apply for our program, but to think of a career in the digital tech field.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great field. I love it. You gotta love it to do it. It's a lot of work, you know, but very rewarding, both financially and, you know, creatively as well. So it's awesome. Yeah, I encourage
Excellent.
it. Yeah.
So I'm gonna remove myself from this conversation, and Mahad, enjoy the conversation, and I'll be back when you're finished.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, so I'm very glad to be here with you today.
Hey,
Thanks
how's
for
it
making
going?
the time. Not
Mhm.
bad, not bad. So my name is Mahad, and I'm just curious. So I looked through your profile a little bit, and I read some of your online articles. And your background is very interesting. The different careers you had are very interesting. So if you can just tell us a bit about yourself and your journey into tech and through tech.
Yeah, you mentioned that the sort of my careers are varied. I mean, to me, it's all about making pretty pixels, so it's all the same in that sense, right?
Awesome.
I started off making and as a guy drawing in school and all that, right? And that's going way back. I've been doing this a long time, right? So when I started off doing this game, there wasn't really many opportunities for, if you could draw, you could probably get into architectural design, or you could get into industrial design. Those were the two sort of programs. There weren't really careers in games and all that stuff, you know, and film and VFX as such. Because I've been doing this a really long time. So um, it started off just making pretty pixels, learning design, learning how to draw. I tried when I would say get into tech is I tried to get into Disney as a traditional animator first 18 times, right? And then
Oh wow.
I failed 18 times, but that's the reason why I kept trying, is because I kept making it into like the final round of and I was competing as I was like a kid, and at the time I was competing with older guys that are draftsmen and stuff like that really understand they've been drawing professionally for years and years and years, and I'd make it into like the top 30 and top 20. And these are like worldwide submissions. There could be someone from any country applying, that was like a medical illustrator somewhere in some country that's applying, that sort of stuff. So it was hard, but they were giving me notes on my drawings and being very constructive. So I kept applying. And at the end, they said I was like very talented, but hey, maybe you should learn about this computer graphics stuff, right? It's like, it's probably going to be a big thing, should get into it. So I'd already started dabbling around with it on some of the machines that are available to me. Where I was at the time, I was fortunate to have access to some really super powerful machines. I don't know how much time you have on this interview, by the way, so you have to tell me. But I had access to some really early stage computer graphics machines. They used to be called Silicon Graphics. Okay, so these are. Have you ever seen Jurassic Park and there's that fat guy and he's playing computers and stuff, and he's like changing the locks on the dinosaurs getting out? It says SGI or Silicon Graphics. Those were the computers that I was using, and those were the really main machines that did computer graphics, right?
Wow,
so
that's amazing.
I happened to work at the largest reseller for those things in North America. So that's how I got into it early. Like, I mean, I'm talking about going way back, dude. So like I was like on Maya version 1 before it was beta. I was on Maya, right? So that's how it started, and then got into film. And actually, before I got into film. I actually did. I was in industrial design at Ford. I worked at Mercedes-Benz doing automotive design, right? So just drawing cars, making show cars, putting them in the auto show. They were using those same computers, right? So like those Silicon Graphics computers, same thing, and so I was able to apply my skills there. I wasn't really like a big car guy. I mean, I like cars. I enjoy the design aspect of it, but I'm not like gasoline in my veins, kind of like just crazy only about cars. I'm interested in others, other creativity. So that's how I ended up getting into film. And I got into Lord of the Rings. I went down to New Zealand for a while, was working on Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. So that started me in film, and I did the King Kong and iRobot and a few other things down there. And that's, while I was down there, I met a lot of friends, that were doing the similar things. I met a guy actually from Toronto, down in New Zealand, and he and I became friends. And then we we ended up starting a software company, and that's where we created this application that's called MUDBOX. So before we did MUDBOX, though, we had helped. There's another application called ZBrush or ZBrush. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a digital sculpting tool, right? So
I wanted to come in for a second, because
yeah, you should.
I found the thing that I found very appealing was the fact that your process, your career, right? I think you began off as a product designer, doing those sort of things, and then you became a tool developer, right?
Yeah.
That was like so that was very intriguing, because it made me think about what is it that made you
easy
sort of.
I'm the artist that gets really frustrated with the tools, right? So what happens is two things.
Wow.
You have to be an artist that's frustrated with the tools.
That's amazing.
And then you have to get to the top of your game in a particular field. So like by the time I was working on Lord of the Rings and Gollum and all that stuff, like companies were coming to us asking us what should be in the next version of the software, right? And so that's when I sort of learned, like, okay, really, there's only a couple of guys doing this. Even though it's a big company, let's say Autodesk or Adobe, the person that actually is doing the core of the application, there's only a couple of people, 2-3 people, whatever, they're doing the core thing. And so I found out it's a very approachable one-on-one type process. Like it's something where it's like I have my shopping list of things that I need to do in order to accomplish my job. And if these things that I've identified are going to be better or faster, I can make a better tool. And so kind of what happened was I mentioned that I helped out the guys at Pixel Logic for ZBrush and giving them feedback. And then the tool exploded off of our feedback and instructions. Wow. And so like then I was like, that's where I was like, okay, now so then the business thing kind of kicked in. It wasn't until I kind of gave it away a few times, because it happened with a few other companies, but I gave it away and showed them the pathway how to make their tool more useful for industry. And after doing that, I was like, well, me and a couple of my friends were like, hey, let's put together our lunch money and then make our own tool, like hire our own developers, make our own tool. And that's how I got into developing it. It wasn't because I was became a super sophisticated, programmer, even though I can write code and stuff like that, but it wasn't the type of code you have to write for this and the type of skills you need to have to develop a 3D application from scratch. That wasn't outside of my wheelhouse, right? My expertise is, what does the market need? What product do they need right now? How do you market it? Can you put your name behind it to sell it? What features they need, and like what sort of performance those features need to have to be best in class in industry. So, like I said, I'm coming at this angle from just a guy making pretty pixels, right? And then looking at the tools that are out there, seeing if I can improve them, and then coming up with the formulas to make better ones. So that's my role in this whole thing.
It's very interesting, because there's a book that I read not too long ago by this guy called Kevin Kelly, and the book is called The Inevitable: The 12 Forces of Technology, right? And in the book, he talks about how a process is, in a certain way, a lot more important than a product. And the example that he gives is the scientific process, right? So you have the scientific process, and as a result of it, people have been creating things and inventing things for the past, since it was made, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that was the thing. So when I saw MUDBOX, I was like, wow. So you are focusing on the process, which was like, it made me so much more curious about that.
Yeah, I would say that in general, a lot of people get caught up about starting businesses, and even though I'm a guy who has a lot of businesses, but like, they get caught up in starting a business, and I would not really focus on that. I would focus on, if you find a whole pile of oil or a whole pile of diamonds or something like that, you can get business guys and you can sell it, right? So 100%. Focus on the solutions to problems and making sure that there's a lot of people who have that problem. Now, the way that you're going to identify that is you can't identify that standing out on the ground. You have to be at the top of the mountain. Like you got to be in the game. Like there's a lot of people try to start
100%.
businesses in things they don't know anything about. They just have an idea. Well, that's great, but you don't know for sure that this is a pain point. Like me, working at the companies I was working at, I'm at the top companies already. So I know if Weta Digital's having that problem, then everybody else has that problem. You see?
100%,
So that's how I'm
100%.
able to identify. So I would agree if that's the perspective of that book, I would highly agree with that. And I would encourage, that's where I encourage like people that are getting into the business to just get in, and do stuff, right? Like, and make some money and everything, keep the lights on, but start paying attention very early to what are the problems to see how you can, actually start a business off of it potentially later. But even in your day job itself, like when you're coming with solutions, that's how you're going to get to the top of the game very, very quickly. Whereas everybody else is showing up for the 9 to 5 and then just going home. You're coming in there trying to really pay attention and solving problems and seeing what the problems of this business are in my little area, right? And then after a couple of shows or a couple of projects, whatever it may be, you're gonna start seeing a pattern. Hey, this is
100%.
this is always a problem, and so then there's that by identifying that problem, now you found an opportunity that you can take advantage of, and if you get together with a few people, you can, if you want to, you can develop a solution for that problem. And that happens. You have to formulate businesses
100%.
around it. The business is just a structure around it, right? But the core of the problem is what you're really looking at. So that's what I would really focus on.
So the thing that's so interesting is that, so for me as a web developer, when I'm coding, the thing that's interesting is that it really makes you use your mind and think about how you can create solutions for yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's a part of the mind that I think people lose over time because we're always copying and pasting or finding other people's solutions, right? But with when you're in tech, it's almost like you're challenged to think for yourself. You have all the tools that you need. All you have to do now is think and try to figure things out on your own and come up with brand new solutions, right? So one of the most gratifying experiences that I have is when I invent a new method or I invent a new way of solving a problem. So that's something that I wanted to share personally. I just had another question, which was, what was your experience like in the beginning stages when you were getting into tech? What were your expectations and what were your initial experiences?
Like I said, I since I was in it so early, I guess, and I was coming out from a person just making pretty pixels and pretty drawings and stuff like that. There wasn't this mythology of tech built up now. You see, you get people coming in it now. Wow. It's like, Zuckerberg and all these things or whatever. It's like that didn't exist. He wasn't even around, right? So it's like I was kind of getting into it for just not for business reasons and not trying to take over the world kind of reasons. It was more just trying to be, first of all, I was trying to be a good designer, right? I just want to be a good designer in my craft. All right, this is a good job, whatever. Okay, these computers are really cool, that sort of thing. So I would look at it the same way now. Don't look at the industry metrics and these kind of things. I don't think that's because tech, what is tech, right? Tech could be biotech, tech could be oil and gas research, tech could be material science, right? So tech is all over the place. You have to focus in on what your skill sets are. Either you're creative or you've got a particular interest in software development, and because that can also be in a bunch of different areas. You need to focus on what the type of, what do you like playing with? Do you like playing with games? Do you like playing with, are there some tools you're interested in? I mean, I would nowadays, I would also caution, having, I've been at Apple and things like that. So I would caution people from, in some senses, to you have to be very smart right now, because there's a lot of stuff coming with artificial intelligence and all that stuff that can actually do a lot of development for you, you know, kind of stuff like that. So you have to really look at what you're interested in, and just pick an area, get really good at that one area. And it's a matter of getting into any of these industries, climbing up the top, or at least high enough so you can see really what's going on. It's not like a year dabbling into it or 2 years dabbling it. It may be like, 3 years really into that, whatever that thing is. And now you can really see what's going on here, and what are the problems, and what are some of the trends, and then sort of making moves from that point, I think. So yeah, as far as me getting into it, I didn't have a mindset like what you're describing, like, oh, I'm getting into tech per se, because that wasn't even, I don't even ever remember that being a word. Like, it wasn't even even a thing, right? Like, I think that, because I don't even think there were really organizations doing websites and stuff like that. Literally, you could either do, if you were getting into games, it was because you were John Carmack and you could make a game from scratch yourself, unaided. You know what I'm saying? Or it was like you wouldn't even get into film really, because like the computer graphics was shoddy. Like, it wasn't like a whole bunch of shops that were doing this, and ILM was doing it, but like, it was hard to get out there too. I tried getting into ILM. I remember that too. So there was a couple of things. You guys may remember, like a movie called Final Fantasy Spirits Within, and they had
100%.
Yeah, they had a production out in Hawaii, and I tried getting on that production. I failed. I went to a job interview. I drove down from northern United States all the way down to I think they had in Atlanta, Georgia. I think they had a SIGGRAPH, and they were interviewing people in the SIGGRAPH, which is a tech conference, right? And it was a guy, Gary Mundell, interviewed me, and another guy. And I failed that interview. Like, the interview at that time, my demo reel was like on VHS tape, So I was
wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, okay, so so you're really like deep in the game.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. That's
so like, yeah,
so,
it wasn't like
yeah.
getting into tech. It was like, hey, these are movies. This graphics is cool. I love computer graphics. I like video games and stuff. I can draw. How can I get into this, right? Like, I was like trying to learn tools, and like I said, I had some early exposure to certain systems and stuff, which is very fortunate. So it's hard to kind of plan a lot, like, too far ahead with this stuff, but like, if you're in the game right now, there's great opportunities in, web too, web applications. There's, sort of decentralized applications and things like that using blockchain and stuff. There are opportunities in visual effects, of course. Motion graphics is always a thing. Augmented reality is always a thing, and that's why I've got, my latest companies around augmented reality. So, yeah, I mean,
I wanted to come in for a second.
Yeah.
So could you tell us more about your latest company? Because when I was reading up on it, it said that the major focus was on 3D and AR, right?
Yeah.
So what made you get into that, and like, what do you think is the position that you want your company to be in the future when those tools become more popular?
Yeah, I think, like, I think that AR and VR, it's like, it's the natural evolution of how human beings recreate imagery, because it's in line with the natural world. Like, you have two eyes that you give binocular vision, and the whole world is three-dimensional around you. Now, we started off in as early humans in a cave, with putting your hand on a wall and spraying some chalk around and making a cave painting, then like papyrus, and then a printing press, right? And these were two-dimensional things that you could draw on. And then you sort of got, eventually got TV and all that, and CRT monitors, and we got LED, LCD monitors, and now we've shrunk down these little tiny screens that are high resolution. Mm-hmm. Eventually, we have to get, and now we've arrived here, we can actually do genuine, like, stereoscopic imagery in real time, because now we invented this real time graphics, because that wasn't a thing before. But now we have the real-time graphics that have kind of caught up enough where visually it can really fool you and it can look very photorealistic. And VR is like that next thing before you have like a brain connected computer that is like what Elon Musk is doing with the neural lace system. So this is the gap that's in between right now. Here's the practical use cases now. So I'm at Apple, right? I was the imaging manager at Apple. So any image when you walk in an Apple store, or anything you see on Tim Cook when he comes on the stage and introduces a new watch or a new laptop or whatever, that's my team that makes all those models and the graphics and the renderings of those, the turntables and imagery and everything, right? So we're there.
Wow.
The company has a little bit of money, right? They got a few programmers around. Actually, their biggest company in the world, right, at that time.
Yeah.
The executive team wanted to do walkthroughs of stores, and at the time internally in Apple, we were doing like we were making full physical mock-ups of Apple stores just to go and have executives go walk through there and say, no, that design sucks or whatever.
Wow.
And it's super expensive to do that. And I was like, hey, we should do this in VR. It's an obvious use case, right? Like we have the CAD model, and
what's the CAD model?
We had the sort of the interior model of an Apple store.
Okay, I understand.
With the shelves and everything, and they like to see the line of sight and where products would be when you walk in the front door. So you have all these like subtle psychological cues that are going around, and you're placing products spatially so that people buy them, they see them, whatever, they interact with them, they engage with them.
So it's almost like you want to have the real life experience of going into the store, but you just want to have it online, right?
Exactly. And it was the same thing. So when I was in automotive design years prior to that, it used to be like, and we still do this in automotive design. So you make a model in the CAD, and then you send it out to what's called a 5-axis milling machine. It's just a big robot arm that carves the whole car out of clay. Okay.
Wow.
And
so what does that mean? Does that mean that you create the design and then you send it off, and then the robot makes it into an actual material thing?
Yeah. So okay. So let me put it. So all right. So you use a software called Alias. Okay. There's lots of different softwares. There's CATIA, Alias. There's a bunch of them. SolidWorks. You have a 3D model, just like you have in a video game, except for there's higher resolution on the model. Okay. And then there's a whole team that runs what's called cutter paths on that model. So basically lines or pathways around it, and those lines sort of those lines describe for the physical milling machine where to cut that surface and to cut that clay. Wow. And it's a giant machine, right? That cuts out a car. It sculpts the whole car for you out of this thing. Now that's all for you to just look at it, and that stuff takes months of work, right? And to model it in the computer, and then also get it onto the floor. If you have changes, you have problems. Now with augmented reality, which is what the app that I created now, I could do something in CAD and drop it in on the studio floor in 5 minutes. So again, going back to what we were talking about earlier in the problems, now I'm saving the company hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, easy, in development costs. And so, do you want to buy
that whole machine becomes useless?
It becomes useless after a while, because like I can walk around literally and look at it. Right now, it's on an iPad or a phone or something. But in 6 or 12 months, it'll be on your glasses, right? And then in 24 months, it's going to be so high resolution that your brain is actually going to say like, this thing is here. Like I can't tell a difference, because most of the stuff that you see in your everyday life. And this is going back to what your original question was. Most of the stuff you see in everyday life, you don't go and touch it. Like when you're driving down the road, you don't go touch anything. You haven't touched anything. You're just sitting on your chair, yet you fully believe that this stuff is real. So now we can do stereo images, and we can do what's called high dynamic range image lighting. So the lighting is super. It has the right range of information, so it looks real.
That's awesome. Just give me a second here, because I think what you said is so interesting. Because you're right. When we're driving, we're stationary. Yeah. And we're on the computer, we're stationary. And most jobs
when you're walking, if you go walk outside right now, you haven't touched a thing. You only touch your feet are touching the ground. You haven't touched the thing. So but your brain fully believes it's real, right? So as long as the resolution is high enough, and the model is accurate and the lighting is physically accurate, which we can now do in a computer, fully physically accurate lighting. Now you can completely simulate your environment, you see. So this is what got me into it. What got me into it is there's a couple other, I have friends that obviously at different companies, they were having similar problems, so I made the product. That's how.
The key thing that I think personally for me really has triggered me right now is the fact that you said that we don't really touch things, right? And not touching, like when you think about the real world, you always think about it in the sense that you're touching something or you're walking around. But like if what makes the real world real is you touching something, and if you're not touching anything, then VR or AR can simulate the real world perfectly, which is something that I haven't thought about up until now.
Yeah, and there's actually companies that are working on technologies that do what we call the haptics, so that you even have a glove that simulates the touch of the virtual object you're touching. Like when I was in Silicon Valley out there was a company I went to, one thing about Silicon Valley is it's a bunch of the similar people getting together and like kind of exchanging ideas and tech. So that's kind of interesting. Other than that, actually, I don't think it's a good place to come up with tech, because like you're too busy, you're too distracted on what everybody else is doing. You're paying attention to this other stuff and not really focused in on what are the problems in the industry that you're trying to solve a problem for. But one of the talks I did go out there, it was like a cookout or something. It was hosted at NVIDIA, right? And like there was a company that had a haptics device that works on like ultrasonic waves. So like basically there's nothing in the air, but when your fingers move out, the sound is like crisscrossing in such a way that you can then feel the digital object.
Wow.
That's right there, but it doesn't exist.
That is crazy.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff like that. I think it's always, and one thing I would say about tech, it's always good to be a fan of it. Like if it just you having a personal interest in it. So you're going to know what's going to, a lot of different things that are coming out, and you can synthesize different ideas and come up with new things. But yeah, I mean, it's a.
I mean, I had a question. So when you look at, let's say, for example, countries like Canada or America, and you look at the tech world here, and you compare it to Asian countries like China, Japan, and Korea, where they have, to a certain degree, a much more
in Korea for a while,
a strong. Oh, that's awesome. So have I, right? So I lived in Seoul for almost like 2 years.
Wow,
and it's
cool.
It's
it was over
I was working there as the English teacher.
I lived in Ilsan, just like near the border. So, yeah.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So you know their tech ecosystem.
Yes.
Is like they are living in the future that we're headed to.
Right. They're definitely, like when I was there, it was like they were doing like the whole esports thing, and that was years ago. And they had
the
they had
PC
to get
games
with
and
your
the
cell
PC
phone
bangs.
and get on a bus or whatever, years and years ago. So yeah.
So what do you think about that, like the East in relation to the West when it comes to technology, and where are we headed in comparison to them, and what is holding us back from moving faster?
I don't know that we are moving any faster. Right now, I think that of course the artificial intelligence, a lot of that comes from here, like University of Toronto, like Jeffrey Hinton and these kind of people. But so like I would say this in general. Here's my feedback about Asia. I've lived in Asia, and have a lot of deep ties there. Let's just say, so, and I've been to a lot of places there. So I would say that one of the things that levels the playing field in terms of your question is the fact that they don't have exposure to a lot of different cultures. So until you become like a cultural leader for everybody, like the way the Western countries have done, from having people from everywhere are there, and then out of that, either there's a bunch of wealthy class that come out, and then the people from the bottom shoot to the top and bring something that was novel that nobody was paying attention to. It shoots to the top because they were hungry, pressured. Pressure makes diamonds, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Like they don't have that. Like they in general, it's a more homogenous society. So there's not a lot of incentive to like break out of the mold like completely. Like here it was like, in the West you had people that were starving, and then like I got to do something to get out of this. This guy has a jumbo jet and I have nothing or whatever, you know. So there was more
100%.
You know, and like there's more here of like, hey, you know, you don't have to have XYZ degrees to get into your things. You know, Bill Gates and these guys didn't go to, you know, they went to university maybe for a little bit, but they dropped out, kind of thing. So like I said, I think that cultural diversity is what is driving new trends, in like new big trends, and a form of creativity that they have yet to display it yet. So, you know, look at all the music that's come out of the Western, you know, jazz, rhythm and blues, R&B, rap music, all that, hip hop, whatever, all these things, right, came out of like just cultural mashups.
100%. Diversity definitely has like its strengths, right? In a lot of different ways.
You know, so the food and everything. So like, that's one thing I didn't see that in Korea. I saw a lot of like, you know, I saw a lot of they're really good at executing on things, you know. So like if they see a trend or notice a trend, they can take it and polish it and really execute it and push it further that way. So it's like, that's why, you know, like, okay, we come out with cell phones, and that's like they just take and polish it and say, hey, now we got this cell phone all of a sudden. But they're not going to say
100%.
They didn't, for example, come up with, you know, AR or using novel uses of AI, for example, just novel uses of it, like mashing it up in crazy ways and stuff like that. So, and I'm not sure that just culturally, and it probably will come maybe in China first, I would say first, rather than Korea, but because there's more hungry people like that. That's just like
in China, right?
Yeah, you know, like you got to have some drive, right? Like there's a reason why.
You know what's very interesting is the fact that there's a game called I think it's called The Honor of Kings, and it was very popular in China, and it became so popular and so addictive that the government had to actually go
and stop
like, yeah, crazy. The government came out and started like coming on their national TV and saying this game is poison. People need to stop playing this game, right?
I think it was that's the one that had like it was based on like these Skinner box theory, where like you get random treasures and like you know, random rewards when you open a box, and you had to like defend your loot in real time. Like if you left the game, like somebody could come and take all your stuff and all that thing. I think I know the game you're talking about.
It's like the game became like so like when you think about like something becoming addictive, that is essentially every game maker's fantasy, right? Making their game so addictive.
Yeah.
But they made the game addictive, but the government said, "Hey, this is too addictive," right?
Yeah.
Which when I heard that, I was
China's is like I said, they've got there's more reason to be hungry there. Like I spent a lot of time in China, so definitely there's a lot of scrappy tech startups and stuff like that. So that place is one to watch, you know, in terms of that. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of Asia in general. I think, you know, young people nowadays like should like go to China just to see what you're up against and so like understand the scope of of the world. Because like even yourself, like going to Korea, right? Like when you see that many people that are just and like that industrialist and like made all this buildings and everything like this.
I was in shock because when I went there, my family was like, "Oh, you're gonna die. They're gonna throw up. There's gonna be a bomb." And you go there and you're like, "Whoa, oh my goodness! There's a VR place every like 2 minutes, right?" Exactly. Everybody's like on their phone. The PC games are everywhere. I'm like, whoa, it's like I'm 2040.
PC Bang, I think is what they call
Bang,
it.
Yeah, the PC Bang. Yeah.
So yeah, like I mean, like it's people should go there just to understand the scope of what we're talking about. Because like here, you're kind of just chilling and it's like relaxed. It's kind of like a farm town in comparison. I mean, Toronto itself has grown 100%. Up a lot. Like in comparison to North America, Toronto is huge. Like. And exploded more than anywhere, even in the United States, right? Like the amount of buildings, constructions we have here
100%,
now,
100%.
and like the tech scene. So it's really, really exploded. I think in Toronto, it's really become a world, you know, leader in many ways. So I think it's a fortunate thing to be coming up here right now. You know, we have things like there's events like Tech TO and all that kind of stuff, and like what you guys are doing here. So there's a lot of this kind of support systems that help to help people get into
so
the
like
craft.
I would even say like what C is doing right now is very interesting because they have this program, right, where they're helping young Black kids learn tools and how to use them and get into the tech industry. Even for myself, when I came back here, I realized there's all these boot camps in Toronto, and like it's so much easier now.
Brain
like the
Station
bridge
is one.
Brain Station, Juno. What is it called? So it's much easier if you really wanted to like break into tech.
Totally.
This is essentially the place to do it, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I mean, if you don't have anything, you don't have any degrees or anything like that, like get into tech, man. Like
it's like the best time.
Yeah, learn your stuff, learn your you know, whatever the craft is. Go take a couple online courses, boot camps, try some stuff, get some customers. You know, nobody cares about all your pieces of papers and degrees and stuff. They want to see what you can do, right? Like, and
so I was talking to a few of my friends yesterday about this, right? And I was telling them that university as a system is going to be overridden by these boot camps because what's going to matter is how good your portfolios are. So it doesn't really matter.
Just barreling in here.
Oh yeah, I can see it. So like it doesn't really matter how many degrees you have, like you're saying, right? No. All that matters is what have you made, and is it online, and can people see it? And if you have a lot of things that you made and they're online, you're probably going to get the job, right?
Exactly. When I'm hiring either web developers, I'm hiring engineers or graphic designers, anything, you know, 3D artists. I do all the interviews and all the hiring in our shop. So like, it's always about like, yep, you got these degrees. Okay, next, like, show me what you've done, what sort of experience you have, what app have you created, what sort of customers you've worked with, what sort of problems have you solved on those things, and can we see some examples of that working? You know, can you send me some links or whatever, right? Like, so it's definitely, it's a very level playing field as far as that goes. Like, I you know,
100%.
You know, I think it's more definitely about capabilities. You know, like it's very flat like that. You know, it's like what
and work ethic. Like what I wanted to know is like what is. So I'm guessing since you have had this drive to go to the top of the mountain, so that you can see what all the weaknesses are and where you can make improvements. Tell us a little bit about your own habits and your work ethic and how you spend your time.
So yeah, I mean, I would say about this, and like you hear a lot of these motivational guys talking about this. I watch them, but I agree with the ones that I've found in my own experience to be true. And so I'll talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
You really do. It's very, very cliche, but you have to kind of enjoy what you're doing because this is super cliche, and it's like, it's so almost like I almost hate people saying that because it's like in a way it's uninstructive in a way, like because the only way I can put it to you is like this, like when most people are sleeping and like most people are out at the club or whatever. I mean, I may go to the club too, but like when most people are doing other stuff and screwing around, I'm doing that thing that you're doing at work, and I'm playing around with it, and I'm just relaxing watching AI papers. You know, I watch 2-minute papers for fun. I just chilling watching that. I watch graphics tutorials for fun. I watch, lectures on some physics thing for fun. I mean, or some design principle of photography. I watch photography video for fun. So like, what you're doing is putting yourself, if you don't like what you're doing, you're putting yourself in a position like you're going to work and you're thinking that the other guy showed up at work at the same time as you. No. Like
100%.
I've been doing this like, so probably by the time you came in one day, I already did it like 3 days already, you know, worth of at home, just chilling, having fun, playing around with it.
To add to what you're saying, like the thing for me is that I get possessed when I have a problem that I cannot fix. Sometimes I told my friends, it's like I'm sleeping and I wake up and in my dreams, I discovered the solution to the problem, right?
Yeah. So yeah, you do have to have that laser focus, right? I think especially as a developer, that's a particular, it's a particular skill in a way, a particular biological trait that you may have, like that you can sort of narrow your foveal view down to something, focusing on it, right? And get in the zone like that, right? Like, you know, just like you talk about different basketball players or whoever getting in the zone, it's 100%. The same thing. And like really like if you're not really feeling that, you should look for something else. Like if it's like really, really hard for you to do it, because like what I do, even though I'm working on it, I'm playing. Like it's like I'm like
That's
I'm
amazing.
not even
Wow.
I'm not even working doing this. You know what I mean? Like I'm not even at work. Like it's I'm just playing. You know, so
100%,
you
100%.
don't have to necessarily be as much as me, but like if it is really hard for you and you start to think sometimes in the morning maybe that like, I wonder, I have some different interest, or like I really enjoy doing this other thing, you should probably be doing that other thing. And I would say there's nothing that you can't make money at, right? Like so like I know people that I know a woman that dances really well,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's my wife, right?
That's
So
amazing.
like, so the thing is like, you know, she should really be doing that professionally, because like she has an intelligence for dance. Like if you show her, if somebody does a whole bunch of things, back for spins around, do a couple of steps and whatever, she can instantly repeat it back to you with her,
Wow.
so like she has that, you have that kind of intelligence, that sort form of intelligence, right? So like you should pursue that, like don't try to force it. No, I got to do something else
100%.
because somebody said this role is cool or something. No, you can make billions of dollars, dancing, so forming a dance studio, making a play, whatever, choreography of something or whatever. So there's lots of ways to, so I would say that that's always a cliche, but the thing that would add to that cliche about enjoying what you do in terms of my work habits is like, yeah, just remember, look, there's other people who are really enjoying this, and do you really want to be competing against them? Because you're not gonna best me. You're not gonna best a guy or girl who is really, really having fun doing what they're doing. You're just
100%.
not. Because
I was gonna add to what you're saying. So one thing that I discovered for myself with tech and like development or whether it's in games or whatever, right? Everything is project based, more or less, which means essentially it's very different from a regular traditional work, right? If things are project based, that means if you have done a lot of projects, that means you have your own library of completed projects that you can use in order to get new projects done, right?
Yes.
So it's not like normal work. If you do a lot of it,
that's right. I mean, in VFX, I call it like a traveling circus. It was the same thing in games. I worked at Electronic Arts as a supervisor and stuff like that. Like, once you have a bunch of these projects under your belt, like you can take those and go on to the next one. It's easy to, and so like that's why it's a traveling circus. It's like, oh, I worked on XYZ, these films. Okay, I worked on these games. All right, you got any openings? Literally, you don't even have to send any resumes or work samples at that point, because after a certain point, they know that you've been in the industry. It's like, yeah, I just finished whatever. I finished Call of Duty, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever.
100%.
And hey, what are you guys doing? Are you guys? It's more of a matter of, are you guys doing anything interesting for me that I may find fun to work with you on, and
100%.
we can jam and make something really cool. That's how I sort of approach it, but. Like after a certain point, it becomes like that. Early on, it's not like that. As you say, you got to get those first projects under your belt, and that's to my earlier point in terms of like if you have business aspirations too. It's like, don't start thinking about businesses, dude. Like get good at your craft, first, and then once you're in it, you're going to see opportunities open up. Just have your eyes open up to those things. That's like. If you've ever heard of The Secret or whatever, like one of these
the book,
the law of attraction. But that's true. It's very true. Like, you could apply anywhere. If you have your radar tuned, if you just go outside and say one day I'm gonna hear somebody speaking Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. By the end of the day, you have probably heard somebody speaking Spanish, right? Like
100%.
Once you turn your radar onto that thing, you're paying attention. It's as simple as that. You're paying attention, and your awareness is there. So
one thing I would add to say is to the audience is that this is essentially probably the best time, because we are headed towards where a lot of these other Asian countries to become much more tech oriented, right? And we haven't really so like now is the time to. It's almost like when the gold rush happened back in the day, right? So when the gold rush happened. I mean, I could be wrong. This is just my belief. So if you have a different belief, you can just you can share it too, right?
I think that definitely there's opportunities in spatial computing, like AR and all that stuff, VR, and I think definitely, like I said, blockchain information, decentralizing apps and stuff like that. Um, making a Netflix that's decentralized or something, like, and that creatives actually get paid for their content.
Oh,
something
wow.
like something like this, right? These are kind of things I think about. But like, yeah, there's always opportunities. You've got especially there's on the horizon, there's short-term horizon, there's quantum computing stuff, right? And we've got D-Wave that's not too far away from here that sort of broke some ground into that
What's
area.
D-Wave?
So it's a company that made a quantum computing machine, and these quantum computers can just process like insane amounts of information, basically. Something like, more bits of information than there are atoms in the universe, that kind of stuff. But basically, when you have this and you pair that together with artificial intelligence, that's when we're talking about. There's something called the Singularity. I don't know if you ever heard that in tech.
Yeah, I heard it. Yeah.
That is what it is. So it's like, combination of these things. You've got like advanced, like supercomputing from quantum computers, and then you have advanced artificial intelligence. This is really the next
So I'll make a plug-in for there's a show called Devs. I don't know if you guys heard of it, but there's a show called Devs, and it's about Silicon Valley, and it's about specifically this, right? Quantum computing, and they create this big machine that's able to like do things that I don't want to say because there might be spoilers. But if anybody who's watching this, watch Devs. It's an amazing.
I'll have to check that out too. I didn't know about that one.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's that stuff. So I think there's opportunities there. I don't, it's for me, my role in that will be it's like creating the visualization platform for humans to not only for entertainment, but for education. Like I can take you to the Great Pyramids, or I can take you to the Great Wall of China, and it looks absolutely photorealistically like you're at the Great Wall of China. You can bend down, look at a piece of grass on the floor, look over the wall, walk down, that sort of stuff. So I'm interested in that, or be able to pre-visualize, the construction of a base on Mars or something like that. So you could you can help people learn more and experience more, empathize with various locations around the world, that sort of thing.
I had a question. So what would you say? Imagine now that you have the ability to go back in time and you see your younger self, right? In high school, and you have this chance to give advice to your younger self, right? You don't have the skills that you have now. So your younger self, what would you say to give them encouragement and advice to prepare them for the long path ahead of them?
I was a screw up in high school, like a lot of these kind of tech success stories or whatever, or something like that. Like I was a screw up in high school. I was a high school dropout, and I went to art school from high school, like when I was 16. So I got into university just because of my drawing ability. I was like on some TV show back then about like kids who can draw well and stuff like that. So the basically, I'm doing what I do out of fear. It's like I don't have the fallback that other people do with like I went to university, so I'm cool, or this false sense of fallback. So I could see the puppet strings on the society very early, right? Like by having those failures and hard times, essentially. I didn't have anything. I had nothing. I was like, so I don't know if there's a way to sort of think your way into that stuff. I would just be very conscious as much as possible. Like try to just be aware. I mean, like I was aware of things back then, but if anything, you could recommend somebody would just be having awareness about yourself, have a consciousness about what's going on in the world, and pay attention. I mean, that's all. I mean, and pay attention to yourself. Like pay attention to what you enjoy focusing in on, and like I said, probably, hopefully you like to focus in on things that are more positive than negative. You know what I mean? Because you could there's a lot of trouble you can focus in on, and kind of shiesty stuff you can focus in on. Hopefully you like to focus in on things that are more positive in nature. But if I had to give some advice to myself, it's just like, just keep paying attention, be aware, be conscious, and you're going to be able to detect trends, because being successful is not about your idea. It's about the combination of your idea with a wave. Like you have to, you got to have a wave behind it, or else it doesn't matter. Like it could
that was a golden idea right there. So can you just repeat that one more time? So it's not really.
So yeah, being successful is not about having a great idea. It's about pairing a great idea with a wave. You know, so like there has to be a trend that's going to make you successful. Like when I created our MUDBOX app, for example, it was right at the intersection where PlayStation first had like normal mapping and stuff like that. And so in order for PlayStation to look next gen, you had to have these highly detailed surfaces that they baked into normal maps. So like my software was used on Uncharted and all these other games and stuff, but in films. And if it wasn't at that time of, you know, I didn't know, you know, if Sony wasn't coming out with their thing at that right time, you know, my thing would have fallen off. You know, if I made that same exact thing now, it would fail, you know? So you have to have, it's all about that wave. And the only way to guess that wave, and just like surfing, you know, you have to get on the wave at the right time, and the wave just pushes right through you. So if you look at any talks on being successful, one of the guys who researches, a lot of it's about timing. But what I found in my experience is, yeah, that's a sort of oversimplification of it, but it is really about catching a wave. Only way to catch a wave is to be conscious.
Wow, that's
deep. So you got to know what's going on and be paying attention, and just be paying attention. That's what I would say. Yeah,
that's awesome. We have, I think, 4 minutes left. So I had one final question for you, and then maybe anything you want to add. So my question was, what would you say to, like, let's say, for example, a lot of kids who went through high school, some of them had negative experiences with education, right?
Yeah, education sucks. Well, the education system sucks.
Like, so some kids just hate reading, they hate writing, they hate math. And
I don't think so. But first thing is not to, you got to be careful about negative self-talk and like over identifying with that fact itself that you just mentioned. I don't like math and so on and so forth. Because if you look at, do you like checking your Instagram, or do you like checking your Snap or your whatever it is, TikTok or whatever, Facebook? Do I like my YouTube? That means you do like education, right? Like you do, it's just you are not. There may not be something in the classroom that is structured in a way that is interesting for you. So, in order to learn, you need to find out what your interest is, and then you will automatically want to find out more about that particular thing. Because certainly having an A in your English class per se is not going to do a damn thing for you to defeat someone in tech or to make up the next big tech thing, right?
100%.
You got to know how to read so you can actually find out what's going on, you know. But yeah, it's not really about like doing well in school per se. I would say that the only benefit to that would be that, you know, you stay out of trouble long enough to identify your interest, right? Like, so that is true, right? Like, don't get yourself in a negative. You want to have a situation that you always have options, right? You don't want to get in a situation. So, like, let's not just say positive or negative. Let's not get in any situations where you have less options. Right? Wow. In anything, right? So that means your freedom, right? Yeah. That means anything, right? Like, so when you don't have a certain amount of money, things like that, you want to try to avoid that because you've now taken away your options. So I would, in terms of learning things, like you said, I mean, and educating yourself, yeah, you're gonna, you know, have time for you to pay attention.
So we're about to like. I think we have a few seconds left. So if there's any final words.
Sorry, this is a great conversation. I had to come up now because Instagram cuts you short after exactly an hour, and we got.
Oh, it's a drop dead. Okay, fine. Okay, great.
Yeah, I don't want that to be.
Find out what you like to do and focus on it.
Guys, thank you so much. If you've got interest in doing the C-Tech program, please log on to ctoronto.com cardwell.org/apply and apply for the C Tech program. Thank you so much for this interview.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Take care. It's nice talking to you.